Well, if you're like most Americans, you spent some time in the past week considering the sacrificial valor of our heroic men and women in uniform who have died so that we might live free. Unless, of course, you're on MSNBC, in which case you wrestled with whether it's okay to call them heroes. I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. You know, men, Chris Hayes, the editor of a journal I've never read, hosts a show on MSNBC that I've never seen. My clean record was irrevocably stained this morning when I watched Hayes lead a discussion about Memorial Day.
I think it's interesting because it is, I think, very difficult to talk about the war dead and the fallen without invoking valor, without invoking the words heroes. Why do I feel so comfortable about the word hero? I feel uncomfortable about the word hero because it seems to me that it is so rhetorically proximate to justifications for more war.
Now, Bill Whittle, you've probably suffered some anxious hours laboring in the smithy of your soul over whether to let fly with that four-letter H word when discussing our men-at-arms. Am I right?
No. No, you're not right. What do you say about this guy who's rhetorically proximate to various inlets or outlets in the human form? You know, I'm just going to cut to the chase here. As I say all the time, the liberals want conservatives to shut up, and conservatives want liberals to keep talking. I want these people to keep talking. We listen to these New York elitist, effete snobs because they've told us that they're smarter than everybody else, but they're not. And they are, without question, some of the worst people on planet Earth when it comes to morals and ethics and the ability to see what's right in front of your nose. Now, you ask soldiers about this kind of thing, and they'll tell you time and time again that we are over there fighting and dying for your freedom to disagree with us. But I actually am beginning to think there comes a point when it is absolutely outrageous that guys like this get to live in this bubble of security provided by better men and women than them without the slightest indication of what goes into protecting that kind of lifestyle that allows this guy to make a comment like that and be surrounded by other people going, oh yes, you make an excellent point. It's rhetorically proximate to disgusting is what it is. And it tells us all we need to know about the people who determine what is news in this country.
Well, now, before you get carried away, Mr. Hayes did apologize the next day. In fact, here's the final passage from his expression of deep regret. He said, "But in seeking to discuss the civilian-military divide and the social distance between those who fight and those who don't, I ended up reinforcing it, conforming to a stereotype of a removed pundit whose views are not anchored in the very real and very wrenching experience of this long decade of war. And for that, I am truly sorry." Now, Stephen Green, confession is good for the soul.
What?
Isn't it great to see a journalist admit that he's wrong?
Oh, just, no, it frightens me. It frightens me. It chills me deep down. What if he means it? What if that is a sincere apology? Who comes up with this word I can't say, this stuff? Civilian-military divide, conforming to a stereotype. There was another one in there I can't even remember. What I want to know is, who did this to his brain, this poor man? I don't think he is capable of thinking his way from point A to point B without meandering through at least 3 liberal cliches. It's sad. It makes me sad to know that there are people like Hayes who are so cluelessly earnest about drivel that is so useless it would get him killed out in the real world. I'm actually glad he's found a comfortable job at MSNBC. Otherwise, I'd worry about his safety, his simple ability to cope and function amongst fellow human beings on planet Earth. I really am.
Ironically, during that same panel discussion, Mr. Hayes actually described himself as a liberal caricature, with, of course, a wink and a nudge and an ironic gleam in his eye. Bill, oddly enough, all 4 of the panelists on the show agreed with Hayes, expressing reluctance to call our troops heroes, as if it might embolden our government to start another war so that we could make some more heroes. Is this normal humility on their part, or pathological antipathy toward their own country?
It's rhetorically proximate to debaggery is what it is. That's my first thought. I want to go back to his apology for a second. So many things there that are interesting. The divide between those of us that fight and those of us that don't. There is a divide for those of us that fight and those of us that don't if you live in skyscrapers in downtown New York City. But for the rest of the country, whose people are out there fighting happen to be fathers and sons and brothers and daughters and nieces and nephews, it's not such a big deal. They're not actually a different species, Chris. You might want to think about that as a start. And then there's this whole business of the idea. First of all, he says a decade of war. Yeah, it's only been a decade of war. What he's really saying is kind of the Bush War. The Bushier wars. Listen, I'm going to get to the point here, okay? The problem with this guy is that he does not understand that the little bubble of prosperity and security that he spent his entire life in has been provided by men and women who have been dying for his freedom from the day this republic was founded, before the Declaration of Independence was signed, and that all of that blood out there on foreign soil has been shed so he can be this degree of idiot? Don't you think that the greatest thing that this guy could do for his country is go out and spend a week deployed with some soldiers and find out what actually goes on out there in the world? Maybe get a little bit of dust on those glasses of his? There's nothing wrong with wearing glasses, by the way. It's just those kind of hipster glasses, this whole kind of intellectual look like I'm so far above all this stuff. You're a bad man, Chris, and you're a stupid man. And it's obvious to anybody who watches you. And it's completely over the heads of anybody who watches MSNBC. Quid pro quo. QED, whatever. I'm out. I'm done.
Well, Steve, I find myself actually referring to our troops as heroes almost without thinking about it. And I've never considered that paying tribute to their service could be seen as a blanket endorsement of any and all U.S. military policies and strategies. What's wrong with me?
Oh, wrong with you, Scott. Where do I begin? No, seriously, I want to talk about something else here. I think Bill hinted at this. Hayes said in his original statement on MSNBC he could understand dying to protect your buddies, but that it's problematic, that was his word, when a soldier dies for the United States of America. It's problematic when somebody dies protecting his country. And in his apologies, what he said, that could have been said about soldiers anywhere, that they suffer. He didn't, not that they're heroes defending their nation, just he feels sorry about them because they suffer. Now, I'm not one of these right-wing crazies who's going to accuse Hayes of being unpatriotic, because I don't have to. That's how he described himself.
Well, ordinary folks here at the local diner can unabashedly stand and salute, bow and thank God for, and weep genuine tears of grief and gratitude over these American heroes. They do it without feeling that their tribute to the troops expresses a political agenda or an implied endorsement of future military adventurism. Ordinary people have moral clarity, not through a lack of reflection or dearth of education, but due to an abundance of discernment, a gut-level grasp of human nature, a palpable experience of life lived hard, and a yeoman's understanding of the history of war. These liberal scribblers and opiners on MSNBC are cripples because they cannot deploy moral judgment in a personal, individual way. They seem constrained to making pronouncements on political machinations or on sweeping societal questions. But when it gets real, when it's someone's dead brother or father or son, they feel they must couch their praise in a political context and unburden themselves of the angst of having to use the term hero, despite their profound abhorrence of this nation's behavior over the years. Essentially, they're saying, I want you to know how unsettling it is for me to recognize heroic sacrifice in service to a nation that is so wrong so often. And by so doing, they wish to elevate themselves morally, even above one who sacrificed his life, that others might have the freedom to equivocate. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire trifecta crew here at PJTV.com, I'm Scott Ott.